I noticed a second ago that there is no one sitting in the front row. You bring a sword to church one Sunday and swing it around a few times, and now no one's in the front row. So we are in the book of James. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch last week. That was fun. So we're in the book of James. We're in James chapter 3, and we're talking about some very practical stuff today. In fact, there may have been some people who went and read ahead, and they were like, we're not going today, babe. After last week, we just need a break from James, because James is tough. And so maybe that's why there's more empty seats around. They were like, I don't know if we can take another week of James. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, it doesn't get any easier today, okay? He's still just on it. And that's why I love James. So today we're actually going to hear from two brothers. We're going to hear from James and Jesus. That James is the baby brother, half baby brother to Jesus. And we're going to look at two things that they both said that tie into what we're talking about today. As you know, we're diving into this concept of the abundant life that Jesus said in John 10:10, I come that you may have life and have it abundantly. And so we've been looking at different books of the Bible. And as we've jumped into James to look at what the abundant life is through James, we see that James says to have an abundant life, it requires faith with works. There has to be action attached to it. And 2 weeks ago, we looked at that in great detail. Last week, we looked at how our faith works through our mouth and how we can use our mouth and should use our mouth and shouldn't use our mouth. Today, he's going to talk about what an abundant life looks like through the idea of comparing ourselves with other people. And this is not a new concept. In fact, James spends 5 verses talking about this because 2,000 years ago, people compared themselves with others. And you may hear things today that you've heard before, that you're familiar with, and that's probably because I struggle with this. I've struggled with this my whole life of comparing me to others and, how come I'm not further along and how come I'm not where they are and how come I don't have what they have and all of that stuff. I've struggled with this my whole life. It's just something inside. And so I've read a lot of books and I've listened to a lot of sermons. And so if you're like, hey, I heard that before, it's probably because I am regurgitating for you the best things I've heard on this subject that has helped me. And so that's what we're going to be talking about, is this idea. And so we're going to be in James 3, beginning in verse 13, and we're going to look at 5 verses of James, 13 to 18. Then we're going to jump over, in the middle of it, we're going to jump over and look at what Jesus had to say about this idea of comparing ourselves to others. And this is a dangerous road. In fact, James is going to let us know, if you're having trouble with your spiritual walk right now, if you feel like you've hit a ceiling, if you feel like you're constantly jumping hurdles and you're knocking over every one of them, that illustration only works if it's during the Olympic year. Everyone else is like, what's a hurdle? But once it's, then you can talk about it. So if you're experiencing issues in your faith walk, James is going to give us a possible solution to what that may be coming from, where that may be stemming from. And so we're going to look at first verse here, James 3, beginning in verse 13. He says, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" And he, of course, just like now, no one's like me. I'm wise and understanding. So let's talk about me for a minute. No one raised their hand. Okay, so he's like, but I want you to see what this looks like. If you claim to be wise and understanding, there should be some things that we see in your life. And then he's going to tell us what a wise and understanding life looks like. So he says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show their wise and understanding life. Show it by their good life. Well, what do you mean by that? Deeds done in humility that come from wisdom. That is what a life looks like that is lived out in wisdom and understanding, a wise life. It should be something that is demonstrated to others. And it should be the good deeds should be demonstrated in humility. And when we do that, that is a wise life. That is a life lived with a lot of self-awareness and understanding of what's going on and in me and what God has given me and how to live that out. James says there is a wise and understanding way to live. But then there's also an unwise way to live. And he's about to go into that in just a second. But he sets the tone here. If you want to know what a wise and understanding life looks like, it is like your life is a book that is always open and is meant to be lived in front of and for the benefit of others. It is meant to be lived in front of and for the benefit of others. That when we have a closed life, when we have a closed book life, when we're internalized, when we close the curtains and shut the door and lock the door and we just stay hunkered down inside of ourselves, we hinder our spiritual growth and we hinder our ability to be influential and helpful to others. And so he's like, this is what it looks like to have a wise understanding life. It should be demonstrated. There should be deeds done in humility that are open and honest for people. But if you want to hinder your life, if you want to put a stumbling block in your life, if you don't want to have a wise and understanding life, there are ways you can do that too. And so he's like, let me tell you what that looks like. But If you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. So there is a way to have a wise and understanding life. And then he's like, but if you're experiencing that, not that, then there may be this happening. There may be bitter envy inside of you and a selfish ambition. And by the way, you didn't have to learn it. You didn't go take it from somewhere else. You didn't watch it in a movie. It's inside of you. This idea of having a jealous look upon other people's lives, an envious, a coveting of what someone else has, that's from within you. That is a monster that already dwells inside of us. The selfish ambition of making everything about me and only me and totally me, and I'm going to grow and I'm going to be an influencer and I'm going to make sure that people know who I am, and everything I do is all about me and I'm the center of my own universe and everyone is revolving around me. This idea, he's like, that began in your hearts, and it's not something to be boastful about. And don't ignore it. Don't try to deny it. It's there. And if you'll start with this and be able to see it for what it is, you can begin to open up your life in a way that you haven't maybe perhaps been able to in a long time. We all have this creepy, crawly, dark monster of envy inside of us, of jealousy. This thing that's constantly looking around and evaluating everyone else around us. And I think that, and I'm making a little bit of a judgment call here, but I think when James wrote this 2,000 years ago, it was difficult. And obviously they struggled with this idea of being jealous and envious of other people. But I think that it has been thoroughly exacerbated in our world because of these devices. I think that, and I'm not that preacher that gets up and trashes stuff, okay? These things are great like 1% of the time, okay? But the other 99% of the time, this can be a very dangerous thing. And I think that if you'll, and you don't have to trust me on this, you can do any kind of Google search on this. And what you will see is that at the invent of these devices, anxiety, depression, and suicide grew at the same rate that these were distributed. Now, why is that? Well, partly because if you wanted to be envious or jealous of another person on the planet, you actually had to be able to see them with your eyeballs. They had to be next door neighbors that had this house or this boat or this car. Now you can literally find things that you can never become, and you can do it as quick as you want and to whatever level you desire. And now all of a sudden we have people who have extreme anxiety because I want to be, I want to look like, I want to have, but you'll never be, you'll never look like, you'll never have. And now we know it more clearly than we've ever known it before, how we fall short in our own estimation of what we deserve and what we think we should look like and have and become. And these things are part, not all, but part. Because like I said, this begins with a monster inside of you. But this thing doesn't help. I remember when I was 17 years old, I started working at a construction. It was a heavy machinery rock crushing facility. I mean, just picture Fred Flintstone. I did that for years, okay? I crushed rock. But while I was there, first thing I learned was how to operate the heavy machinery, which when you're inside the cab of a dozer or loader, excavator, whatever, you're safe in there. Not really that big of an issue. But then about my third week there, the boss man pulled me out and said, hey, we got to go fix this machine. And this was part of a conveyor system and a crusher and rock crushing, all this stuff. Very dangerous stuff. And so we're looking at it while it's running and it's loud, and he starts explaining to me, this machine doesn't care about you at all. In fact, it will gladly rip off your arm and use your blood to lubricate its bearings. It don't care about you at all. And he scared me. And I've never lost a limb. And I've worked around a lot of machines because of that one phrase. This machine doesn't care about you. And it will rip off the people in your life. It will rip your marriage to shreds. It will rip your relationship with your kids to shreds. It will rip apart the things in your life, and it don't care. And it won't discipline you, and it won't govern you, and it won't make you, teach you to become better. These devices will only take us further down the road of destruction. The discipline to use these things and to not become overly envious and over, selfish ambition has to start within us. It has to be a breaking of the monster. And so we need to be very aware of this concept that we have a bitter envy and a jealous and a selfish ambition that begins in our hearts. This word right here is interesting because envy, we all know what envy, jealousy, I want what you got and that kind of thing. This is, not only do I want what you have, but this is every time you get something good, I get really mad. And whenever something bad happens to you, I smile on the inside. Let me tell you, I probably experienced this a lot in my life, but I'm going to go ahead and do a confession, okay? So right now, if this is confession time, I'm not asking you to do it. I'm the one with the microphone, I'll do it. The one time this is the most clear to me, this bitterness, this being happy for someone else's demise, the most clear understanding that I remember doing this, my kids were in sports and baseball teams, and I had this clear understanding of how one of my children should have been at this number in the batting order because I knew their talent, I knew their ability, and I knew the position we were in. And if my kid was in this position on the batting order, we would score better. And I told the coach this. And then the coach said, no, I've put this person in that batting order. And when that kid, who was on my kid's team, struck out, inside I went, yes. Am I the only one? Is it just me? Where does that come from, man? Like, that is a dark, evil, embarrassing feeling where you actually smile over the demise of another human being, and yet it's there. It's always there because it's in there, man. It's a sinful nature that's just always there. And James says, if you're feeling some sort of hindrance in your growth, this might be where we need to start. Is this bitter envy and this self-ambition in your heart? Now this, we already know how to overcome this, the selfish ambition part. Philippians 4:2, Paul teaches us how to overcome this. He says that we all have this selfish, he says, do nothing out of, these exact words, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, so don't do anything for yourself. And then he says, instead, or rather, consider others as more important than yourselves. So he's like, you got this problem right here? All you got to do is put everyone else ahead of you. That's all you got to do. That's the fix. And you're like, come on. But no, we know how to do this, don't we? Every time you've been to a wedding, you've done this, right? Every time you've been to a wedding, you do this. It's when they start walking, when the bride starts walking down the aisle, what do? You stand up. Does anyone have to tell you to stand up? No. It's her day. Did anyone stand up when you walked in? No. Were you mad about it? No. It's her day. Did anyone bring you gifts at their wedding? No. They brought her gifts at her wedding. Everyone knows how to behave at a wedding with the bride. All you have to do is treat everyone in your life as if they're the bride every day. That's all you have to do. Or if that doesn't work for you, there's someone in your heart that's just an influencer to you, or someone that is just a hero to you. Could be a sports person, could be a movie star. I don't know. There's someone in your life that you just admire that's way up here, and you'll never meet them, right? But let's just say they do. Let's just say they walk in to your work or they walk into your house. Whatever you would do with your life in that moment, however you would change your life, you would make sure they had everything they needed. You would stop everything you do. You would not go into work that day. Like, you would change your life for that moment to be with that person, and you would make sure that they were above you. Just treat everyone in your life like that. Paul says, you want to get over this idea of you're the center of your own universe? Just start treating everyone else as if they're more important than you. By the way, you want a healthy marriage? That's the answer. They are more important than you. And then the other one's like, well, hold on a minute. No, I'm going to make sure you're more important than me. And the other one's going, no, I'm going to make sure you're more important than me. Then all of a sudden you're in this competition of who's more important. Let me tell you something. It don't get much sweeter than that, okay? You don't know until you've lived it, where the other person is like, you're more important. No, you're more important. No, you're more important. I mean, it's just an amazing feeling. The opposite isn't true. When it's all about me and my and what I want, it can be a painful marriage. So we already know the answer to this. Man, what do we do to work on this jealousness, this envy about other people? Well, James goes on, and we need to move on. He says this wisdom that the world gives us about how to live this life of envy and selfish ambition, this is not a real wisdom. It's a fake wisdom. This fake wisdom does not come from heaven. It's earthly, it's unspiritual, and it's demonic. You're like, whoa, James, didn't you go a little far? I mean, you went all the way to demon? Like, it's that bad? James is like, it's that bad. You want to put a hindrance in your spiritual growth. You want to put a finality to how you can grow and how you can grow in those people that are around you and your family and your marriage and your kids. If you want to hinder that, just do what the world says is wise when it comes to this. And what that looks like is just everything's all about totally about you, and you just go after what everyone else has. Then you can do that. But James is like, that is not the way. And he's like, here's what he says. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. Disorder and every evil practice. So let me just ask this. Do you find that there are parts of your life that are in chaos right now? Maybe not every part, but maybe there's like 2 or 3 parts. Maybe, and this is all different seasons of life, right? So maybe at one season of life it was this, now it's this. Do you find disorder or chaos or uncertainty, something just awry? Maybe your financial world. You look at your bank statement, it's a little bit chaotic right now, and then you start asking yourself why. James would say, maybe ask yourself why and see if it was because they had it and you wanted it, and so you went into debt to get it. Or you saw what they had, and now you're going to buy that, and you had no business buying that, and now you regret it, and now you're justifying it, and you can't do the things you used to do because now you're in a chaotic financial world because of decisions you made based on a jealous heart of what someone else has. What about your marriage? Your marriage is in a state of chaos because you saw the husband she had, or you saw the wife that he had, and now you're just all the time comparing yours to theirs, and you're like, if you would just... Because you're watching how they're behaving, right? You're seeing the things that they do and the places they go and the things that they say. The problem is you're comparing your B-roll, your worst day, to their best. And you're like, why can't we have that every day? They don't have that every day. Okay? In fact, whatever you're seeing, y'all ever watched a family get photos taken? Y'all ever watched it? I just went to Maryland because, my family made me. And so we go up there, and we're on the beach because they want to do family pictures. I hate family pictures, but we want to do... Well, there's this great beach, and right at sunset, that's when... What is that called? Come on, photographers. The golden hour, right? So you go to the golden hour at the beach, and you get family pictures. Well, we get there, and there's already 4 families out there, right? And one of them had these kids that were like twin boys that were 7, 6. You can already know that. And you know how they were dressed, right? White shirts, khaki pants, right? Every one of them, right? They're all dressed this way. And there's these 2 little boys, and they are just running like crazy all over the place, going bananas on the sand. And then all of a sudden, his mom's like, get over here now, and all, the demon comes out, whatever. Anyway, and then they all get right there, and it's like, smile, and then boom, they go right back to chaos again. You're looking at that picture going, oh, how sweet. Look how awesome. They got it all together. It's so pretty. And they're in there, they go home, and you know what the wife is doing and the husband doing? They're looking at your pictures going, I wish I had what they had. We all do this. We're all guilty of this idea of, I want what someone else has. And James is like, this is a way to put a hindrance on your walk and on your growth as a believer. Now, I'm going to take a break from James and jump over to his brother, who really unpacks this in a different way. But it's just so genius the way Jesus does this. He's brilliant. And this one story, you know this story that I'm about to show you, but we usually look at it from a different perspective. But this time I want to look at it from this perspective of what someone else has and what I have and what to do with all of that. So here we go. Let's look at Jesus real quick. This is in Matthew 25. He says, and this is this made-up story. This isn't real. He's not like telling something that happened to people. This is a parable. It's a parable. It's a made-up story. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold, silver. It doesn't matter. It's a lot. It's a lot. He gives them a lot. He gives them 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The first thing you need to realize, and this can be hard to swallow, but you need to just go ahead and settle this in your heart, okay? The part that we need to go ahead and get settled in our heart is the master determined who got what. The master determined who got what, okay? They didn't get to pick it. They didn't get to sign up for it. The master determined who got what. Then he goes on. Yeah, we'll move on right here. Okay. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. He went and put it to work and did some stuff with it. So also the one with 2 bags of gold, he gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. See, he never really treated it like his, never really thought that he owned it at all, that it was just something the master gave him, and he buried it and he hid it. And I think the main thing, that the evil that's creeping right behind this, is this idea that he's blaming the master. You know what he's saying? If you'd have given me 5 bags, I could have done something with it. If you'd have given me 2 bags, I could have done something with it. But since you only gave me 1 bag, I'm going to bury it. Because you cheated me. You cheated me, and because you cheated me, I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to bury it. Well, God, if you'd have given me her husband, if you'd have given me his wife, if I would have grown up in that family, if I had their career, if I was making his money, if I had that house, if I lived in this situation, then I could. So God, you cheated me. And what do we do when we feel cheated? Just kind of get paralyzed. Won't do anything. You see, this guy didn't do anything evil. He just didn't do anything. He was entrusted with whatever, and he didn't get to determine what he was entrusted with. The master did. So who is he blaming? Who is he upset with? He hid his master's money. Look at this. Look at the wording here. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and they settled accounts with them. Who settled accounts? The master with the servants. You know who didn't settle accounts? Servant with servant. They didn't settle accounts with one another, and you will never be responsible for settling accounts with someone next to you. The person who has more, the person who has less is irrelevant. That doesn't matter. You'll never settle accounts with them. The only people we need to be settling accounts with and thinking about is the master, who one day each and every one of us will be held accountable and have to say, this is what I did with what you gave me. This is what I did with what you gave me. That's it. This is what I did with what you gave me. Verse 20. The man who had received the 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, and listen to this language, you entrusted me. You entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. Look what I've done with it. I've gained 5 more. Look at what I did with what you gave me. Look at what I did with what you gave me. You gave me 5, I gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. To which everyone said, a few is 5 bags of gold. Like we've never seen that much gold. That's a lot. Well, to the master, it's nothing. And to God, it's not, the streets are paved with this stuff. It ain't that big of a deal to him. But the idea is the master distributes what he distributes to whom he distributes it. And we're all accountable for what little we have, no matter how much it is. I will put you in charge of many things. And then look at the reward. I want you to share in my happiness. Well, how much happiness? All of it. As much happiness as I have, you get to share in that. Because you had 5 and you turned it into 10. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see what Jesus is doing here. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me. There's that word again. You gave it to me. It's not mine. I didn't earn it, but you gave it to me and you entrusted me with it. And so look at what I do with what you've given me. I've gained 2 more. Look at the master's response. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. How much of it? All of it. Same reward. Same reward. Doesn't matter. The amount, what they did, doesn't matter. The fact is they did something with what was entrusted to them. Now I want you to hear the language, hear the heart, the jealous, envious heart of the servant, the third servant. Listen to what he says. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came, Master, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. You. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your gold, not what you entrusted me, your stuff. I just took your stuff and I hid it in the ground. See what I did with what you gave me? Nothing. Didn't do anything evil with it, but I did nothing with it. Here is exactly and only what belongs to you. Do you hear his heart? You shortchanged me. If you would have given me more, I could have done more. If you'd have given me 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bags, I could have blown your socks off with what I could have done. But nah, you decided you're only going to give me 1. And so because you're only going to give me 1, I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to bury it. And a lot of us live our lives this way. We're looking around at other people and we're like, if you'd have given me what they had, if you'd give me what she had, if you give me what he had, you don't know what I could do, but because I'm stuck with what I got, I'm going to do nothing. I'm not putting more of myself into it. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm not going to overly share love. I'm not going to be a peacemaker in my home. I'm just going to allow the disorder and the chaos to rip us to shreds until one day I'll be able to say with a little bit of half-heartedness, well, I did what I could, but it just fell apart anyway. And it's not true. And most of us know when we give up on any relationship, we really never gave it all we had. There was a little bit of selfish ambition and envious pride involved that kept us from doing the hard thing. How does the master respond to this? Well, he's like, all right, I see what you did there. You wicked, lazy servant. Now, wicked is not the best translation here. Worthless would be a better translation here. You worthless, lazy servant. You knew that I harvest where I have not sown, and I gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have at least received it back with interest. You could have done the bare minimum. Why didn't you even think of this? Because I was too busy blaming you for what little I had. I didn't even think about what little I could have done. So then what's the master's response? Well, okay, so take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. You see, this third servant's frustration was with his master. See, this third servant, like the second servant, like the first servant, they all had an inventory. They all had things about them that made them uniquely them, just like you do, right? So you have a family that is unlike any other family. It's your family, and you're the only one that has that number and that amount of family. And you're the only one who has that idea of what your future should look like. You're the only one that has the time that you have and how you choose to use the time, kind of like Jacob said in the video, like, I'm pretty careful with my time. I hoard it. I want to make sure that I, give it out in a way that I think is helpful to me and to my family. You have a certain amount of education, and it's a different kind of education than anyone else has. You have a story that's unique to only you. You have health or not a lot of health or whatever that's yours, whatever that looks like. You have a network of friends that's only uniquely your network of friends. You have a look that's yours. It's only yours. You have wealth or, a little bit of wealth or medium wealth or a lot of wealth. It's only yours. You have talent. You have a career. And then there's the unknown category that's kind of like all those other mixed up things that make you you. We all have this. Let me tell you where the danger comes in. We all do this. We look at several people. And we look at one person's family, and I wish my family was like that. I wish we went out on dates like that. I wish that we went on family vacations like that. I wish that we did that. In fact, I'm going to do things to make sure that we get to do that. And we look at someone else, and we say, man, I love the way she spends her time. I'm going to start trying to spend my time the way she spends her time. I'm very, very envious of the way she spends her time. And man, his health, I want to be like him. I'm going to do whatever I can and become that. And their friends and their wealth and his career, and we take the best possible picture, which isn't even a real picture, of 9 different people and try to carbon copy that into our lives. And when we do that, we're undermining God's work in our life, because this is your unique inventory that God has given you to use for His glory. And when we're so consumed with trying to become or be jealous of or take what someone else has, we're undermining God's will for our life with what He's already given us. And we're saying, I can't do what you want me to do with what you've given me. You've cheated me. You've shortchanged me. And so I'm going to take this into my own hands. And then we end up doing dumb things. Like Abraham. It was like, you promised me a son, God, but you didn't give me a son with the wife that I have, so I'm just going to go sleep with the woman right next door and see if I can have a kid with her, because you're not doing it right. And we think, God, you didn't give me my soulmate, so I'm going to go hunt another one. I'm going to look at their kids, and I'm going to try to make my kids like their kids. I'm going to see the way they spend time. I'm going to make mine spend time the way they, and you just keep doing this over and over and over again. And eventually, you can't even do what God has called you to do because you're so busy trying to be someone else that you were never created to be. And it undermines His will for us. Back to James. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. When you're caught up in this, you will do things here you never saw yourself doing before. You're like, I can't even believe I did that. I can't believe I treated her that way. I can't believe I said that about him. I can't believe I did that. Because this stuff right here, man, it will creep in there and eat up some stuff. Verse 17. But the wisdom that comes from heaven, the way to live your life, the way to get outside of this is there has to be a pureness to it. And then there's a peace-loving and considerate and submissive and full of mercy and good fruit and impartial and sincere. Now, when I first looked at this list, I was like, okay, how many people do I know that would say, hey, would you describe Laddie? And this would be the first word they would come up with. And I'm like, wow, no one. There is no one I know that would use that word. Then I start going, one at a time, peace-loving, just look at my Facebook account. Like, I know how to stir up some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not, you know what I'm saying? Considerate. I mean, this actually has the word, a word behind it of gentle, like a gentle consideration. This is the idea of, I have something to share with you, and I know how to correct the problem, and I can do it in a way that's gentle, or I can do it my way, which I'm really good at, which is really mean. And it's a spiritual gift. And some of the other people in this room have that same spiritual gift, where we can be right, and we know how to take things like God's word that is meant to be distributed with gentility and with grace, and we can make this thing as sharp, fiery darts and pierce and hurt people. But it's not just with this. You can do it with your history and your past too, can't you? Like, you get into a good fight with your spouse, you know how to find that one thing from that one moment about 12 years ago, and you know how to say just the right word at just the right time to make them feel like garbage. And we're all very good at this. So I'm looking at this list going, all right, how much of this am I described? Like, I'm peace-loving, considerate, submissive. Do I look like a submissive person? Full of mercy? If I watch someone sin, is the first thing that comes up in me mercy? Or is it like, man, I can't believe I can't believe he, are you kidding me? I know what he says he does. He's an elder. He's a deacon. He serves at this church. He's a pastor. She's a this. She's a that. Are you kidding me? No. What should come up in us first, James says, a life that is lived not with selfish envy and selfish ambition, but a life that is lived for the glory and honor of our Heavenly Father is full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Then he started with this whole idea of, you want to have a chaotic life, you want to have disorder in your life, fine, live this way. Live with envy and jealousy and a selfish ambition, fine. But he ends with this. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. You want to have peace? You got to be a peacemaker in the world. You got to be one who sows peace in other people. And you'll reap a harvest of righteousness when you learn to live this idea of having a humble, remember he told us at the very beginning, humility, deeds done in humility bring peace. Now, I wrote down two things that we can do, because you're like, okay, well, how do I fix this? What are some things I can do to fix this? I came up with two, both of which I stole from other people who are much smarter than me, because I think these are the right answers. We know how to do the selfish ambition, right? Treat everyone like they're a bride, but how do we work on this envy and this jealousy? Two things. One, in your head. What do you need to do in your head? Number one, take your cue about you, your value, who you are, what you have, your abilities. Take your cue about you from the one who made you, loves you, and redeemed you. Don't take your cue from her or from him or from they or from this or from your bank statement. Take your value from the one who made you, created you just the way you're supposed to be, loves you just the way you are, and redeems you, the one who actually purchased you and bought you back so that you could spend eternity with him. If you're going to take your value, your cue of your value from anything, don't look around. Look up. Look to the one who made you, loves you, and redeemed you. This was a big one for me. The second one is more practical. Again, celebrate what God has given others and leverage what God has given you. Celebrate what God has given others. This will break the comparison trap. Because, right, we're all striving to be the ers, right? Better, faster, skinnier, richer, wealthier, like more, whatever the is. He's like, listen, you want to break the ers? Here's what you do. You celebrate what God has given others, and you leverage what God has given you. We're really good at doing the reverse. We're really good at leveraging what God has given others, right? Oh, you have that? Can I borrow that? Can I take that? Can I have that? And we will just take and take and take and take and take until there's nothing left. And we're also really good at celebrating what God has given us. All over this. Look at what I got. Look at what I'm doing. Look at who I'm with. Look at where I am. We do the opposite. And James is telling you, you want to break this comparison trap mentality? Celebrate what God has given others. What does that look like? I'm not good at this part. But like, there's a lot of ways you can do this. When you see someone gets a raise, man, call them up. You deserve it. I'm so proud of you. You deserve that. I'm so happy for you. If you're single, you've been single a long time, and you're watching all of your single friends starting to get married, I know what can happen. You get bitter, right? You're like, okay, God, when's it my turn? Marriage. I've gone to like 7 marriages. None of them are mine. Like, what's going on? What do I do here? You know what you need to celebrate with them. Don't get bitter. Celebrate with them. Figure out what that looks like. There's a lot of ways to do this, but you need to celebrate with others and whenever there's a blessing, a victory. Celebrate what God has given, and then leverage what God has given you. Come up with creative ways to take your one bag, which, by the way, come on, let's just be honest. None of us in here are one bag people. We're all two bag people. Because every one of us in this room can think of somebody with 5 bags, right? And everyone in this room can think of somebody with 1 bag. So let's just call us, we're all 2 baggers, okay? Everybody in the room. So we're all 2 bags. What are you doing with the 2 bags God has given you? Have you buried them? Or are you handing them over to him because you know that one day you'll be held accountable for what he has given you? Don't be jealous. Don't look at the 5 bag people. And don't look down at the 1 bag people. You're only responsible for what you have, what God has given you. So celebrate what God has given others and leverage what God has given you. This is a fun conversation to have with your spouse, by the way. Go out to dinner and get your budget out. And you're like, wait, you just said fun, and now you said budget. I know, listen, this can be fun. Get out your budget, and then after you do your tithe and your saving, and you pay all your bills, and you got a little bit left, find out what can you do to leverage that for somebody else's benefit. You're like, it's only $5. So what? So what can you do with that? Look at your time. Hey, we've got like 4 hours this week. We haven't really planned out for anything. We've already done the kids. We've already done, given to each other. We've already done all this. So we've got a little bit of time here. What do you want to do with it? Let's go volunteer here. Let's go help out here. Leverage whatever God has given you for others. It was so funny, Chad. At the back, during the 3rd song, I went back to my son, and I'm like, you need to get signed up in a small group. And he said, I got work. And then Chad said, some of you were thinking you got work. And I was like, and then I pointed at you. Well, I was back there. I was like, see? And he was like, ah. So we can all come up with ways of, trying to figure out, no, I don't have time for that. I don't have time. I don't have the resources for that. I'm going to bury the 2 bags God has given me because I'm going to utilize and suck out of this life everything I can because it's really all about me in the end. Or you can live what James says, Jesus says, a more fulfilling, a more abundant life by celebrating what God has given others and by leveraging what God has given you. You want to get out of the comparison trap? You want to have a life that's meaningful and it doesn't have a ceiling on your spiritual growth? Start living like this. It changed everything for me. I know it can change everything for you too. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your words. Thank you for this book of